right?
I mean, but at the same time,
During
I was
COVID.
like, kids will be kids. It's kind
Right.
I mean, I'm not saying they shouldn't have destroyed that car, but that
Right.
girl's going to drive like a Tesla now. She got like 180 grand
Oh my
in
God.
GoFundMe's for her car getting flipped at the party. But that's what Boulder kind of always was like a
Right.
sleeping giant. And every now and then it woke up and everybody's like, oh shit, there it is.
Yeah, totally.
And so do we expect that to come back? You know, like COVID took a lot of what, you know, your friends, your, you know, colleagues and things of that nature. Brasserie 1010, the Med, like we've lost a lot. Are we going to come back as strong in places like Boulder?
I think so. I think the food dining scene will come back as strong as it was. You know, most of the community stayed throughout, you know, and yeah, it was a really hard, as we all know in our industry, it was like absolutely insane.
It was raped and pillaged.
Yeah, it was just don't want to live through that ever again. And so, but it's, you know, I do think it, you know, and you're already seeing it. Like Ashkara just opened up an outfit up there, so you're already seeing some, you know, different outfits that are looking at Boulder to reopen in this market. So, and I think like, you know, hopefully one thing that might come out of it is kind of going back to that Pearl Street where they have it locked down from the end of the street all the way to 9th Street now, I think is awesome. I would love like them to leave that open, have that like open mall, and it just continues to evolve that way. So hopefully there's some good things that come out of it, you know?
And, you know, I feel like not only Boulder, but Denver as well is trying to make those strides to kind of help the restaurateur. We saw Governor Polis just recently re-sign the alcohol thing.
Yep.
We've been talking about places like the Dairy Block and Lammer Square having off-site consumption similar to what you're talking about in Boulder.
Yep.
Which one do you feel, you have restaurants in both, which one do you feel will happen first?
I think, you know, obviously extending the alcohol, I think like off-site consumption is probably a little bit far away. I think it should be, you know, that we should have off-site consumption. I don't think it needs to, you know, necessarily turn into New Orleans or Las Vegas, but, you know, I think there's ways to moderately have a good time and have a great weekend, you know, and so I think there's some things where we could loosen up, you know, but I'm also not the person regulating all those madness, so I can't speak for the police department and, you know, other problems that evolve from those things.
As a former New Orleans resident, I get it, and I also see that you took a shot at us right there as well. But I understand as well. You know,
I don't get one of my favorite cities in the world.
Right, and it's possibly the most cuisine-rich city in the
100%,
country, for sure. Okay, so we kind of did the little blend, and we started talking Boulder, and let's talk a little bit about Denver. You know,
of course.
We touched on the pandemic, but you have two locations, and you actually were one of the first proprietors in Colorado. We're sitting here in the Source to be one of those innovators in the food hall scene for Denver.
Totally.
You know, the Source was our first, and now you see the trend. It's like fucking everywhere.
It's
There's
crazy.
one every 6 blocks. But y'all were, in fact, the first one, and you were the restaurant proprietor that kind of got the ball rolling with Ramey from Corrida.
Yep.
So tell us a little bit about how the Denver scene has been, especially with the situation where y'all are a common shared space, and then coming out of a pandemic, how big of a I mean, we've switched gears, you know, as you pet the acorn, we're now BELLOTA.
Yeah.
You know, so how has it been in Denver,
Totally.
you know, operating out of a food hall?
You know, being part of the Source and opening up when we did and really pushing the envelope here, which was 2013 when we moved in here. So
Dude, it was so popping, too.
Yeah,
Do you
it was
remember those
crazy.
steak quesadillas over there? You couldn't even get into y'all's restaurant. Like,
it was
you had
insane.
to grab, like, to-go quesadillas.
So
McLean and Mary Allison slaying the bar over there. Good old days.
Yeah, those are good old days for sure. And so, you know, and you know, I think that part of a couple things, you know, with the Source is that they did the reconstruction on Brighton, which was great and it needed it, but it also took a lot of wind out of sails, you know, out of the whole street, right? And it's not just us, it's from all the way from the bridge all the way to 38th, right? And so you saw a lot of businesses suffer because of that. And, you know, there wasn't a week that I wasn't online with the councilman being like, hurry this thing up, you know, because it was really tough. But, you know, being part of the first food hall in the state of Colorado and such a unique and beautiful building, something that was like super proud of and super stoked about and still stoked to be here. And, you know, coming out of the pandemic, I think it's going to be a slow rise back up, but I think we'll get there. I think it'll become another premier destination area and still rocking it out. And I think another 6 months, hopefully it's back to that 2013, 2014 insanity down here.
And it definitely was. And, you know, you're not alone in here. And you have two businesses. We touched on them briefly earlier. Melted next door, which is the frozen concoctions and sweets, and then BELLOTA, which is the Mexican-inspired. They've seen it on our IG. We ate here not too terribly long ago.
Nice.
Fire-ass food. Yeah, the burritos were fantastic. The cocktail list was exceptional. And then I believe we had almost like a meat pie or an empanada of sorts that was just, it was so fire.
Right,
so
the Costa de Ribeye taco. Woo! Yeah, lights out.
Yeah, so
Chef Manny's slaying it back there.
Dude, he is. Yeah. So what was the concept of we're going to switch gears with Acorn to BELLOTA kind of during the COVID pandemic times?
Yeah, it was, coming out of... Yeah, it's got a long story, but
you're literally on this podcast to tell fucking stories.
That's great.
Yeah.
So
please don't give me the short-changed answer. People aren't here for the abridged version.
Right?
If they were, they'll check our page.
That's awesome. No, so coming out of, the Bryan Boulevard construction, we invested a lot of money into the space. We took over where the Western Daughter space was. We kicked the kitchen a lot open. We put Melted in there, kind of did some different things. And so we did, actually, you were here for when we did that kind of grand reopening. And that would have been January of 2020. And then, pandemic happens 8 weeks later and we shut down. And, so things were kind of crazy, and those are some really dark months in there trying to figure everything out. And as we reopened in the summertime, whenever, the whole food culture in general kind of changed, right? Like people are eating tacos, people are eating pizza, people are eating at home, people weren't going out. The whole dynamic changed. And so, once Acorn came back online, we just never had that thump to get kind of going through summertime. And, we were doing okay, but then once we got into fall and not knowing what was going to happen with the virus and anything from the government at that point, because everything had been super, quiet, really. Yeah, those guys hadn't done anything, other than
they still fucking haven't done anything, really.
And so as we went into fall, we were like, hey, we should really think about, my business partners and I think about, do we pivot this thing? Do we hibernate it? What do we do? And we, Bill Espiqueta, who owns Smoke next door, and he's been with us for a long time, and we brought him on as a managing partner. And we talked to him, and Bill and I talked at the basement of Oak years ago about doing a taco joint and going back to my Juanita's days and my love for tequila and everything. And so
I love tequila too.
Yeah. It is the best juice. And so so anyway, we're let's pivot, let's change. And so we did this crazy hard pivot, changed the whole restaurant, 3.5 weeks, opened back up 3.5 weeks later, second shutdown.
I mean, you couldn't catch a break. And, because y'all, and especially you mentioned the Boulder scene as well, y'all are in a precarious spot with Oak. And, we did the Corrida dinner where Amos, his wife, was delivering them.
Totally, 100%.
With the prime rib and the spinach. It was fantastic.
So
but everyone had to make either pivots. It was either pivot or die.
Yep.
And, we were trying to do the podcast. We were in the same boat. When your hobbies are drinking, smoking, and eating with friends, and they close down restaurants and bars, and all you can do is smoke pot in your own house, the podcast suffered, And so, I feel like the theme was pivoting. And so while y'all may have pivoted BELLOTA into this whole new thing, y'all have had to do that with all of y'all's paradigms, but we're glad to see y'all on the other side.
Totally. I'd say everything came out on the other side a little scarred, maybe a little more enlightened. I don't know. So we'll see.
And it's not something anyone could fucking plan for, And so I just felt bad because it's how can you help out these fine dining restaurants when the experience was part of it, and you can't be around anybody, and we didn't even know what the virus was. So it was a really precarious position. But now that we're coming out of it, we have big moves being made. So let's talk a little bit about what exciting things we have on the forefront for the summer.
Totally.
As we've ramped up Corrida, everyone that, if you don't know, they have possibly the sexiest patio in Colorado. It overlooks the Flatirons. Bobby was on the podcast back when pre-COVID, talking about it was one of his favorite places to dine, one of his favorite places to drink in Boulder. So let's talk a little bit about what do we have on the forefront? What can people be looking forward to not only this summer if they're dining at one of our restaurants, but what's to come? What do we have on the sunrise and the horizon? Horizon. Sunrise is not the... Sorry, it's the weed.
Mainly just holding on to the wheels right now, so make sure they don't go flying off. That's the first thing. So, but honestly, getting back to, as you know, reopening for all restaurants has its own set of challenges as well. So as we've been reopening, really having a clear vision on where we want to go. What does that look like for the business models? What does that look like for our employees? What does that look like for our investment teams, and how we can kind of look at things in a different light? And that's something that we really went hard after during COVID, of trying to balance out, all of our employees and getting them different pay and things. And then, as far as the restaurants themselves, I think really just trying to get that jazz back, at Corrida, really bringing back the steak program, really diving back into the gin and tonic cart, and you're starting to see some really great dishes that are coming out, and so getting our staff back up to where we're able to handle the volume. We got a nice new kind of lounge area out there. We're going to be adding some new features to the restaurant that'll make it a little more functional for the guests. So really excited about that. We also at Oak, we actually just did a kind of a kitchen remodel there to make it a little more streamlined, kind of make the kitchen a little bit more efficient. We still have the wood-fired oven. We got rid of the wood-fired grill. We do have a little rotisserie we put in there now. So, and then we're looking at maybe doing almost a different concept for lunch, where it would almost be a kind of grab and go kind of thing. So we'll see how that goes. So just kind of, again, how do we lean and mean? And so, and how do we get really efficient but still have a successful business? At BELLOTA, we have our first summer here, to wide open, great parties. It's a lot of tequila. Every Wednesday we're doing different agave spirits we're featuring. So a lot of fun there.
What's today?
And so we're doing a mezcal.
Today's Wednesday.
So it is Wednesday.
Wait, isn't it?
It is Wednesday.
Today's Wednesday, right?
It is Wednesday.
Glenn just showed up. By the way, Glenn's a fantastic manager. He's fucking polite as can be. He'll take care of you. Call in, check on their website. They'll get reservations for you, but I'd recommend thoroughly come down on Wednesdays.
Or is it a mezcal we're featuring today? Mezcal. Very. He's got to say it better than me.
Yeah, say that better.
Ray Campero Tepestate.
That's awesome.
Sounds Russian, but I'll fuck with it. Sounds good.
It's not vodka.
Yeah. Well, I thought this was going to be vodka.
This is vodka.
It's water. Yeah. All right. So we have a lot kind of on the docket. I think literally, we kind of been talking pandemic stuff because we've been friends online for a minute, but we were doing work with, we had Amos on the podcast the week before restaurants shut down. And so it was shit, we can't even promote these episodes. What are we supposed to do? The world is done. And so we're glad that we're finally able to sit down and kind of talk nitty gritty with
100%.
you. But you're not out of the woods, because while we did just talk business, and we'll circle back to it, we're diving into the personal questions now.
There we go.
As a resident of Colorado for 30 years, obviously you have your pulse on the thumb in the industry, but we want to know a little bit more about, where does Bryan hang out? Where does Bryan like to catch a cocktail buzz? What is Bryan's favorite way to get high? These are questions that everybody likes to know, because you're a weathered veteran. Restaurant industry for 35 years. You've probably seen some shit, smoked some shit. Things along those lines. I can say that as well. I've been in the industry now for a while. But we'll start that right after this ad. This ad is Nove is Luxury. The new edible line from the Incredibles team at Medically Correct has brought you 6 different flavors: single source chocolate, premium distillate, fantastic 100 milligram bars, $20-ish out the door from most any retailers in Colorado. You can check them out at Nove is Luxury on social media, or noveisluxury.com. And if you don't believe me, go out and try it for yourself. My favorite is the sea salt and caramel. The caramel just oozes out of the little chocolate. Think of a Rolo, but with THC in it and a little bit better chocolate, not that mass-produced bullshit. This is some primo South American single source shit. I'm not talking that Colombian pow pow. I'm talking Peruvian bang bang. Chocolate premier single source. Fantastic THC. Gets you where you're trying to go every time, and has a delicious flavor. Give them a chance. Give them a whirl. Try them out your next time you're in Cali's or any other dispensary around town. All right, Bryan, that was a great ad read without the mention of the Colombian thing, which we'll take out. But, all right, so we have a lot of questions that we want to ask you as just a guy that in the know. Where do you call home?
I live in Boulder.
Okay, so those listening, he's going to be a little bit skewed Boulder. Where's your happy hour if you were able to have a place have a drink not at one of your locations?
Yeah, of course. The Bitter Bar and the Sundown Saloon.
Okay, nice call.
Yep.
And then we'll do a quick ad read there for your team. What's the happy hour in Boulder for your teams?
You know,
Do
right?
we have one?
We don't have one right
Okay.
now. So,
Well, just
yeah.
kidding. All right.
Yeah.
So this next question, this one will play.
Now I got to add one.
Yeah, it's okay. I'm not going to edit this. That's